Hi, and welcome to Form Now. We are in Meet the Professor segment. I am Taylor Kemp, the Form Platform Manager, and with me is Dr. Scott Hefelfinger, professor here at the Augustine Institute Graduate School, and you teach theology.
I do.
Correct? Wonderful. Well, Dr. Hefelfinger, I thought a good place to start is, could you just say, what year did you come to the Augustine Institute to teach?
Yeah, I came here in summer of 2017.
Very nice. Just tell us a little bit about your journey of how you got here. Maybe where did you study? What was your kind of course of studies leading you here? And then how did you end up at the Augustine Institute?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've had a long and winding path to ending up here. And, I won't go all the way back to the beginning. But I think a relevant starting point is I did my undergraduate studies at the University of California at Berkeley, and I was studying music composition, actually. So I was a music major in my undergrad, and I had a conversion experience during that time, and one of the beautiful results of that was discovering the kind of intellectual tradition behind our faith.
So how did you, as a music major, I guess just give us some short contours of what kind of led to a little bit of your reversion, your interest switching from music and then getting into the more intellectual side of the faith?
Yeah, so I was performing and writing music, but while I was in that college environment, there were some challenges to my faith, intellectual challenges.
Berkeley, I can imagine, yes.
At Berkeley, not exactly a bastion of orthodox, fruitful Christianity. And so these intellectual challenges were paired with just some moral laziness in my life. And so I fell away from my faith over the course of the first 2 years. And then in my third year there, through the witness of a friend, I came back to the faith. Wow. But this friend was a non-denominational Christian. And so in conversations with her, I would sort of find myself thinking to myself and asking myself, well, why exactly am I Catholic?
Yeah.
And when I had that question, my first thought was, well, if I left the church, what would my mom say?
Yeah.
And then my second thought was, what would God think? I mean, why am I Catholic?
Yeah.
And so that started a journey of discovery and reading some great contemporary authors at that time, such as Pope John Paul II, who I came to know and love, Cardinal Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI. And so God in his providence really nurtured that renewal of faith. And as I read those authors and some of these texts and discovered the tradition of the church, it was so nourishing and so life-giving that I thought, although I still love music, and to this day I love music, I really want to go down this path to come to know and love this God.
I love there's three things that I just noticed in your story. One is the witness of a friend, how impactful that can be on someone. Then also I love the little bit of like Catholic conscience guilt of like, what did my parents think? Which is, that really is a great impulse for us that I think is a good thing for parents to hear. And then finally kind of your obedience to God. So maybe just a note on music. What do you like to play? What do you still play?
Yeah, so when I can, I play piano. That's my primary instrument. In other phases of my life, I've played some viola. I've played guitar, a little bit of drums. So just a bunch of things, a little bit, and writing music. And so nowadays I don't have that much time. I have dreams of writing some liturgical music one day, and I try to play piano. I teach my children piano. And so I try to stay involved, and I listen to a lot of music. I love classical music.
You also curate coffee.
Yes. I love coffee.
Yes. We bought some. We had some this morning. That's a true statement. It was delicious.
So, exactly. My son and I roast coffee together, and it's a lot of fun. Coffee and music. I mean, it's a good
life.
Faith,
and theology.
Exactly.
It's a beautiful, beautiful life. Okay, so you were an undergrad at Berkeley. You get more interested in the intellectual side of the faith, and then where do you go from there?
I went out to Europe, actually. I was looking for graduate programs in theology. And I was considering.
So at this point, had you like fully moved away from your music career?
No, I was still finishing up. Yeah, I was finishing up the music. I was working on a senior project, actually, which was writing a mass. And that was a very beautiful thing that I was able to do. But in the midst of this, I felt called in this other direction. And so I started exploring options. I ended up going out to Europe. I went to a school called the International Theological Institute in Austria. And I was studying out there. I was out there actually for a total of 8 years studying and teaching. I met my future wife there, and our first child was born there. So I have very fond attachments to Austria. Then I came back to the States and was at the University of Notre Dame, where I did my doctorate in moral theology.
Okay. And how did you end up in Austria? Obviously from California to Austria. How did you find the school?
Right. I had never been to Europe, so this was a great adventure. I think, as I remember it, I just sort of did an internet search for kind of faithful Catholic theology programs. And although I was looking at some of the big names in the United States, I was looking at Notre Dame, which I went to later, and Notre Dame wanted me to go there. But it just struck me as a little incongruous, I guess, that I hadn't studied any philosophy or theology in my undergrad. I was doing music. I loved it. And I could go to Notre Dame, and in 2 years, I'd come out, and they would call me a master of theology. And I thought, I don't know. It seems a little presumptuous. But then when I saw this program in Europe, in Austria, it was a 5-year program for a master's degree. And it was like starting over. And I thought, if I want to think with the mind of the church, I need to be steeped in the tradition of the church. And so I wanted to commit that time to just being steeped in that tradition. And it was super fruitful.
That's amazing. And that's also a very not common way of thinking. Like, I think a lot about how people today are, and it's like, I want to get what I want as fast as I could possibly want. And that was not the path you chose, which is really beautiful. So you go to Notre Dame to study moral theology. Why moral theology?
Yeah, so I had done this master's degree in sacred theology generally. I actually did another degree out there, a licentiate in systematic or dogmatic theology. But when I was considering what direction to go for my doctoral studies, what I came back to was actually related to my into the faith in college and into the intellectual side of the faith. And that was, as I was reading these beautiful texts, I thought, these speak so profoundly to the human heart, to the questions that everybody has in their moral lives. And so when I was considering what direction to go, one of the major concerns that I had was the church has such a richness to offer to us in how to live a fully human life in Christ. And I wanted to explore that further, enable myself to then teach that and share that with others.
And so that's a nice segue into, well, I guess maybe how did you come to the Augustine Institute after you got your doctorate? And then maybe just what are the classes that you teach here?
Yeah. So, we started out mentioning sort of God's providence a little bit. And here too, it was actually a beautiful work of providence that several years before I was coming to the end of my PhD studies at Notre Dame, when I was out in Europe, actually, my future wife's roommate was in the first class, I think, at the Augustine Institute. And so I heard about the Augustine Institute, and I thought, that's a great project. I hope it goes well. You never know with these little Catholic institutions.
That you would be,
right? And I sort of was like, that's great. It's new. I wish them all the best. Don't know how it's going to turn out. Then a couple years later, I had another friend who was in one of the early classes, and she had a great experience. And I thought, hey, that's fantastic. Then it kind of fell off my radar for several years. I was just wrapped up in my studies and my growing family. And when it came time to think about, well, where do I want to go to teach, there were a few different options. And among them, to my surprise, was the Augustine Institute. And so I rediscovered it, and I thought, there's some really fruitful and important work going on there in the graduate school. And so I was really blessed to be offered a position and to come and teach.
That is awesome. I'm very glad that you came to teach here. I've had you for, I think, just moral and spiritual theology, but I really loved your class. So maybe tell us a little about what is, I guess, the classes that you teach here. What is your kind of main one, and maybe just a little bit about that.
So the classes that I teach draw on the background that I mentioned in dogmatic theology and moral theology. My main area is moral. So I teach a course, Moral and Spiritual Theology. Which,
that was the one I had, yes.
Which gives kind of the basic outline of how the church thinks about our life in Christ, and then how that life bears fruit and develops in the interior life, spiritual theology. In addition to that, I teach a course in our leadership program called Leadership for the New Evangelization, which I think of as kind of a practical sequel to the Moral and Spiritual Theology course, where we look at the virtues, we look at how you live these out, what it means for leaders, what are the skills and habits of a leader and the saints up to which we can look. And then I teach a course on Christian marriage. I teach a course on the Carmelite Masters of Prayer. I've taught the Creed course in dogmatic theology, a course on human sexuality. So mostly in the moral domain.
Yeah, but still pretty broad. I mean, I feel like it's been fun for me just to, as I'm interviewing more and more of the professors, because there's a lot of classes I didn't know that even you taught all of those, and I didn't know that Professor Klein, Professor Prothero, kind of how broad we are. And then I came to understand that for our faculty here, that's a little bit of a mark of the faculty is really kind of a spreading out, which is just really cool.
And if I can jump in on that, that's one of the great things I think about teaching here and our program is what's typical in a university setting in graduate studies is what I would call a kind of premature rush to specialization, right? How quickly can you get narrow so that you can find your little topic and then share your little insight with the world? And that has its place, and that's certainly important, and I'm a product of that system to some extent. But thankfully, I'm also a product of another system, which is to be steeped in the sources and to grow in wisdom. And that necessarily entails retaining a kind of breadth.
Yes, I really like that. It's beautiful. And I love the way that our faculty does things, which I was a beneficiary of, which has been great. So I wanted to move a little bit into just a little bit of your life as a professor in terms of interacting. We can start with your interactions with the students here on campus and then move into how you interact with the distance ed program that we offer.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question and a great way of laying it out, because I've come to realize in my time here that the rich life that we have on campus doesn't compete with our distance education program, but spills over into it and enriches it. And so the on-campus life is very collegial, it's very natural. One little kind of example of that is once a week during the school year, I do a little music listening group. And we just get together over lunch and we listen to some beautiful piece of music that is a favorite that I've either come to love or I'm just listening to at the moment, and very informal, very fun. And then we'll talk about the music and other things related to it. So there's a lot of informal gatherings in addition to formal activities that we do, and lots of opportunities to kind of mix on campus. But with the DE students, just to kind of illustrate that spillover, they can't come obviously to those music listening groups. But when I communicate with them regularly in emails, I usually will include a piece of music that they can, a link to a piece of music that they listen to, and I'll offer a couple of thoughts on the music. And often it's something we've, just listened to on campus. So there's a nice connection there.
Something that I like a lot too is just, I don't know, kind of the really great individuality of each of the professors. And then I would say all of your guys' willingness to share that outside of the classroom. So for you, it's music and some things with coffee. And Dr. Prothero was talking about how they invite students to come over after Mass for brunch on Sundays. And I know, and Dr. Gieschek has prayer groups on Tuesday nights. And there's this kind of beautiful symphony of a way of different offerings that are tailored to different groups. And it's really great. I guess just... any other thoughts on DE? I mean, I'm sure listeners are tired of me. I've mentioned this on most shows, but that I had the privilege of being DE for a year and then on campus for a year. And just our DE program really is so great in terms of you really do feel like you're part of a living community rather than just stuck in this like module by module, week by week. You still feel like you're moving along at a regular pace. And so I guess just what is that like for a professor? What is interactions like for you with the students?
Yeah, I mean, it will sound like a contradiction to say that some of my favorite interactions with the DE students are when they come on campus for intensive courses.
Yes.
This is one of the most beautiful ways that we get to share life together with the DE students. But as you, I'm sure, experienced when you came on campus, that rich and intense interaction is prepared through all sorts of interactions prior to that, so that when the DE students arrive for an intensive course, they often, very often tell us, I felt like I was coming home. Like
Yes.
I knew everybody there, their names at least. I knew the professors well. And so how does that happen? Well, it happens through regular email exchange. It happens through conversations over Zoom or over the phone, which we have regularly with our DE students. And as they need them, it happens through advising, where we're in regular contact with the DE students, especially to check in and say, hey, how are things going? And here's the next course. Any questions on what you might register for? And so we have quite a bit of communication with the DE students. And part of the reason for that is because we love our DE students.
Yeah.
And so we don't outsource that to kind of administrators or assistants as much. We would try to keep that within the faculty to an extent that's reasonable, so that we can have this little bit of getting to know each other.
And I was grateful for that. And I would for sure testify that is true, that you feel like you are truly, as a DE student, interacting with the professor and not an aide or something like that, which is really great. We don't have a ton of time left, but just maybe a favorite saint, or at least a top candidate as a favorite saint.
Sure. Yeah. Out of so many favorites,
Yes.
My intellectual mentor, I would say, and favorite saint is St. Thomas Aquinas. And St. Thomas was called by Pope Benedict XVI the greatest theologian in the history of the church. And that authority is manifested throughout the church's history after the Middle Ages and in conciliar texts. But of course, that beauty and that rigorous thinking of St. Thomas draws from the heritage that came before him. And principal among those from whom he draws is St. Augustine. So there's this happy harmony between our patron here, Augustine, and the saint that I take as my intellectual mentor, St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yes, and I guess you start with the Come Holy Spirit prayer. Do you still do that for the beginning of your classes?
I vary that prayer.
Okay,
so sometimes
you move
I
it
do.
along.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, and I remember going through some of St. Thomas in your class, which was very good. So the last thing, I guess you can pick which angle you want to take, but favorite book of the Bible, I guess either just for you personally or maybe devotionally, or favorite book of the Bible to teach. You can pick which path you choose.
Sure. I mean, I'll just mention in the New Testament, I love the Gospel of John and the epistles of St. John. Lots of riches there. But the book that I actually kind of have the most fun with in my own thinking and profound fruit in my own reflection and then also in teaching is the book of Genesis. Going back to the beginning, we find, I teach mostly morals, and there is so much. This book is incredibly rich when it comes to the principles of the moral life. We see this in creation, man created in the image of God, but also in the great stories and narratives that follow, these figures that teach us about the covenants and all of this, but also about just the challenges of everyday human life and interaction and relationships. So I love the book of Genesis.
Yes, I remember in your class, we spent an entire class going through the creation narrative, just the first chapter of Genesis. And I remember being like, oh, it was awesome. I remember it was many different things that I hadn't heard before in salvation history that we took. And I was just like, this was awesome. So I can feel your love for the book of Genesis, which is great. Lastly, before we close, I thought, would you maybe say just a word about, because not only are you a professor here at the Augustine Institute, but then you also are on our short course platform. Would you maybe talk about, maybe if anyone's listening and they're not able to maybe get involved with the graduate school at this moment, but maybe short courses is a nice medium, which we can put a link in the show notes about. But what is the short course that you taught?
So the short course program is just a lot of fun. I mean, it's a lot of fun for us as professors because it gives us this fantastic little outlet to share sort of what we do in the classroom, but in a, slightly less formal and more condensed. A little
less rigorous.
Yeah. And so I've taught on morals there. I've taught on prayer. I have an upcoming course on Catholic social teaching. And it's a platform and an offering of courses that's constantly being enriched and expanded. So if any of you are thinking about it out there, it's great on its own, just a lot of fun, a lot of great information. And it might also whet the appetite to realize, sort of as I did as an undergraduate, like, the riches here are incredible. I'd love to continue studying in one form or another. So the short course platform that we have is fantastic.
It is, and we'll put a link in the show notes. And I think it's like $23 a month, and you get
I think
access
that's
to
right.
all the courses, so you can check out all of them. And they're taught by all of the professors here. So yeah, we recommend checking that out. And we will also put a link for the graduate school, so you can preview lectures. You can make a call to our admissions department if you're interested in learning more. So thank you for joining me, Dr.
Thanks for having
Hefelfinger.
me.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. We will see you next time. God bless.